Sarah Mitchell stood in the corner of the county courthouse hallway in Fairfield, Colorado. She was alone. She wore a simple gray suit that she had bought on sale at a department store 3 years ago. Her brown hair was pulled back in a practical bun. She wore no makeup. She carried a worn leather portfolio with her discharge papers inside. To anyone who walked past her, she was invisible. She was just a middle-aged woman waiting for something. No one looked at her twice. But Sarah Mitchell was not what she appeared to be. Sarah Mitchell was a ghost. And ghosts in the military were the most dangerous soldiers of all. She had served in the United States Army for 24 years. Not in regular units. Not in command positions that people knew about. Not in ways that could be discussed at dinner parties or mentioned to friends. Sarah had served in places that did not officially exist, doing things that could not be officially confirmed, with people whose names could never be publicly known. She was a Delta Force operator. Delta Force is the most elite military unit in the United States. Delta Force operators are not soldiers that civilians know about. They are the best of the best. They are the ones sent on missions that other units cannot do. They are the ones who operate in the shadows. They are the ones who train for years to be perfect at their job, and then their job is to make sure no one ever knows what they did. Sarah Mitchell had been a Delta Force operator for 18 of her 24 years of military service. She had completed training that 99% of soldiers could not survive. She had served in 13 countries. She had carried out operations that saved American lives. She had been wounded twice. She had killed to protect her fellow soldiers. She had done things that would haunt her forever. And now, at 52 years old, she was invisible. She had left Delta Force 5 years ago. The work had taken too much. It had taken her marriage. It had taken her ability to have normal relationships. It had taken pieces of her soul that she was not sure could be put back together. So she had retired. She had gotten out. She moved to Fairfield, Colorado, a small town where no one knew her. She took a job as a security consultant for a private company. It was boring work, but it was honest work, and it did not require her to kill anyone. She kept to herself. She made no friends. She lived a quiet life. Then Emma came into her life. Emma was her granddaughter. Sarah had a son named Michael. Michael was in the Marine Corps. Michael was serving overseas. Michael's wife, Rachel, had died in a car accident 3 years ago. The accident was Sarah's fault. Not legally. Not morally, in a sense that would hold up in court. But Sarah had been calling Michael while she was driving, distracted him, caused him to text back instead of paying full attention, and the chain of events had led to Rachel being hit by another vehicle while Michael was picking her up from the airport to see his mother. Sarah had never told anyone it was her fault. But she knew. She knew every single day. After Rachel died, Michael could not cope. He threw himself into his work in the Marines. He deployed. He was gone. And Emma, who was 4 years old when her mother died, was left with no one. That was when Sarah stepped in. She became Emma's guardian. She became the person who raised her. She became the person Emma called grandmother. Emma was now 9 years old. She was smart and funny and full of life. She did not know that her grandmother was a trained killer. She did not know that her grandmother had spent 18 years training for combat. She did not know any of that. To Emma, her grandmother was simply a quiet woman who worked a boring job and made the world's best chocolate chip cookies. Sarah loved her granddaughter more than she had ever loved anything in her life. And now, a man named Derek Thompson was trying to take Emma away from her. Derek Thompson was Michael's best friend from high school. After Rachel died, Derek had started spending time with Emma. He brought her gifts. He took her to movies. He was kind to her. Sarah had been grateful. She thought Derek was just being a good family friend. But then Derek filed a petition for custody. Derek claimed that Sarah was not fit to be Emma's guardian. He claimed that Sarah had PTSD and untreated trauma from her military service. He claimed that Sarah was emotionally cold and incapable of providing the kind of warm, nurturing environment that a young girl needed. He claimed that he, Derek, had a stable job, a stable life, and a home that would be much better for Emma than living with an aging woman who kept to herself. Sarah's lawyer, Jennifer Park, had asked her to come to court today to fight this petition. Jennifer believed Sarah was a good guardian. But Jennifer also knew that judges sometimes held bias. Judges sometimes made assumptions about military veterans. Judges sometimes sided with men who seemed more likable, more normal, more ordinary. So here Sarah stood. In the corner of the courthouse hallway. Invisible. Waiting. She did not know that at that very moment, a message was being sent through military channels. A message about her. A message that would bring people to this courthouse. People from the unit she had served with. People who knew exactly who Sarah Mitchell was and what she had done. People who knew that she was not just a quiet woman in a gray suit. People who knew that she was a soldier. And people who knew that no one was going to take Emma away from her. Not on their watch. The courtroom was packed. Derek had hired an excellent lawyer. The lawyer was skilled at making emotional arguments. The lawyer was skilled at making a client seem sympathetic and a defendant seem dangerous. Derek took the stand and told his story. He talked about watching Sarah with Emma. He said Sarah was cold. He said Sarah did not show affection. He said Sarah worked all the time and was never present. He said he was worried about Emma's emotional well-being. Every word was carefully chosen. Every word was designed to paint Sarah as someone who could not be trusted with a child's emotional needs. Then Derek's lawyer called his expert witnesses. He had a psychologist testify that military PTSD could affect parenting. He had a social worker testify that older guardians sometimes struggled to meet the needs of children. He had a teacher testify that while Emma was doing well in school, she sometimes seemed withdrawn and sad. Sarah's lawyer, Jennifer Park, tried to counter. She called teachers who said Emma was happy and engaged. She called people from Sarah's neighborhood who said Sarah was kind and responsible. She called a therapist who said Sarah had no signs of PTSD or trauma. But the damage was done. Judge Williams was an older man who had never served in the military. He did not understand military service. He had heard a compelling narrative from Derek. He had heard expert testimony. He had heard about Sarah's background in the military as if it were automatically a problem. The judge looked skeptical of Sarah from the beginning. When Sarah testified, the judge asked tough questions. He asked about her emotional availability. He asked about her mental health. He asked about her military background as if it were evidence against her. Sarah answered every question honestly. But she could see in the judge's eyes that he was already leaning toward Derek. Then the judge made his ruling. "I am concerned," he said from the bench, "about the ability of Ms. Mitchell to provide adequate emotional care for a 9-year-old child. While Ms. Mitchell appears to be financially stable and physically capable of providing for Emma Thompson, I have serious reservations about her emotional capacity." Sarah felt her heart sink. The judge continued. The testimony from the expert witnesses suggests that Ms. Mitchell's military background and potential underlying trauma may be affecting her ability to connect with her granddaughter. I am awarding temporary custody to Derek Thompson, pending a full evaluation of Ms. Mitchell's psychological fitness. Jennifer Park stood up. "Your Honor, I object. There is no evidence that Ms. Mitchell is unfit." "Your objection is noted," the judge said. "But the court is making this decision based on the totality of the evidence. Ms. Mitchell will be permitted supervised visitation with Emma until a psychological evaluation is completed." The gavel came down. In that moment, Sarah Mitchell lost custody of her granddaughter. Emma, who was sitting in the back of the courtroom with a court-appointed babysitter, looked confused. She did not understand what was happening. She only knew that she would not be going home with her grandmother. She would be going with Derek, the man who had seemed so nice, but whom she barely knew. Sarah felt tears on her face. She did not cry often. Soldiers in Delta Force learned not to cry. But she cried now. Jennifer put her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "We can appeal," Jennifer said. "We can fight this." But Sarah was barely listening. She was watching Emma being led out of the courtroom by the court-appointed babysitter, heading toward Derek's waiting car. Sarah had survived 18 years in Delta Force. She had survived operations in countries she could not name. She had survived injuries that should have killed her. She had survived the loss of her marriage and the death of her daughter-in-law. But she could not survive losing Emma. As she stood there in the courtroom, defeated, she did not know that a phone call had been made 2 hours earlier. A phone call from a retired Delta Force operator who still had connections to active units. A phone call about Sarah Mitchell. A phone call that said, "They are trying to take her granddaughter away. She is losing custody. She needs help." That phone call had reached the right person. That phone call had reached someone with authority. That phone call had reached a 4-star general. The general's name was Marcus Williams. He had commanded Delta Force operations for 8 years. He knew every soldier who had served under his command during that time. He knew Sarah Mitchell. He knew her record. He knew what she had accomplished. He knew what she had sacrificed. And he knew that no court in America was going to take away Emma's grandmother while he was alive. The general had already made calls. The general had already arranged for a security detail to come to the courthouse. The general had already made arrangements that would change everything. They would arrive the next morning. Today, Sarah Mitchell sat in her lawyer's office, defeated and crying, not knowing that her life was about to change completely. She did not know that within 24 hours, the United States military's most elite soldiers would walk into that courtroom. She did not know that Delta Force operators would stand for her. She did not know that the moment when a general called her "ma'am" would tell a story that would change everything. But she was about to find out. Sarah did not sleep that night. She sat on her bed, fully clothed, staring at nothing. Emma was with Derek. Emma was sleeping in a strange house with a man Emma barely knew. Emma was probably scared and confused. Sarah's hands shook as she thought about it. At 7 a.m., Jennifer Park called her. "Sarah, come to the courthouse at 9 o'clock this morning," Jennifer said. "Something has come up. Something important. I cannot tell you what it is on the phone, but you need to be there." Sarah did not understand. But she got dressed. She put on the same gray suit. She went to the courthouse. When she arrived at 8:45 a.m., she took her usual spot. In the corner of the hallway outside the courtroom. Invisible. Waiting. She was looking down at her hands when she noticed the boots. Military boots. Combat boots. Standing directly in front of her. Sarah looked up. Standing in front of her was a man she did not recognize. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with short dark hair and a scar on his jaw. He wore civilian clothes, but military boots. He looked at Sarah like he was studying her. "Sarah," the man said. Sarah stood up. "Yes. I'm Marcus," the man said. "You might not remember me. I was in your unit. I served with you in Afghanistan. We were on the same team for 3 operations." Sarah's eyes widened. She remembered now. A younger man. A soldier she had trained. A soldier she had trusted with her life. "Marcus," Sarah said. "How did you?" "Come on," Marcus said. "We need to get you in the courtroom." Marcus gestured to the courtroom door. Sarah walked toward it, confused. As she reached the door, it opened. Coming out of the courtroom was a tall, broad-shouldered man with 4 gold stars on his shoulder. A 4-star general. His face was serious. His eyes were sharp and intelligent. He was not a man who tolerated nonsense. The general looked at Sarah. His expression changed. His stern face softened just slightly. He recognized her. The general walked toward Sarah. "Ms. Mitchell," the general said. That was all. Just 2 words. But the way he said them, the formality of the address, told everyone around them something important. This was not a casual greeting. This was one officer greeting another officer with respect. Sarah came to attention automatically. "Military training never left you." "General Williams," she said. "I heard about what happened yesterday," the general said. "I came to help." Before Sarah could respond, she noticed that more people were coming out of the courtroom behind the general. One by one, soldiers in civilian clothes with military boots emerged. She recognized each one. Jenkins. She had trained with him. He had been her spotter on 3 operations. Stone. He had been her team leader. She had recommended him for commendation. Davis. He had served with her in 3 separate deployments. And then more. And more. 6 operators in total. All of them walked past the general. All of them stopped when they saw Sarah. All of them saluted. Sarah's eyes widened. She came to attention and returned their salutes. Military protocol. Soldier to soldier. Respect to respect. "What is happening?" Sarah whispered. "We're taking care of this," Marcus said simply. "Come on." Sarah walked with Marcus and the general toward the courtroom. Behind them came the 6 Delta Force operators. They walked in formation, like soldiers. They looked like soldiers. Because they were soldiers. When they walked through those courtroom doors, everything changed. Judge Williams was sitting at his bench, looking at some papers. Derek and his lawyer were there, sitting at the table. Derek looked up casually, expecting the proceedings to start. His face went white. Coming through the courtroom doors was a 4-star general. Behind him walked a woman that Derek had completely disregarded yesterday. Behind her came 6 men in civilian clothes who moved like warriors. They moved with perfect posture. They moved with absolute discipline. They moved like soldiers trained at the highest level. The general walked to the front of the courtroom. The Delta Force operators stood in a line along the back wall. They stood at perfect attention. They looked like they had just walked out of a Special Operations Command Center. Judge Williams stood up from his bench. He looked shocked. He looked like a man who had just realized something very important. "General Williams," the judge said, "I was not expecting you. This is a family court proceeding." "I know," the general said. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. "I came because I heard that a woman's military service was questioned in this courtroom. I came to tell you who she really is." The general gestured to the Delta Force operators. "Your Honor, these men are Delta Force operators. They are the most elite soldiers in the United States military. They are the ones sent on missions that other units cannot do. They are the ones that the world does not know about. Every single one of them has served with Sarah Mitchell." The courtroom was completely silent. The general continued. Sarah Mitchell was not just a soldier. Sarah Mitchell was one of the best Delta Force operators this nation has ever trained. Sarah Mitchell passed a selection course that 99% of soldiers cannot survive. Sarah Mitchell spent 18 years in the most elite unit in the world. Derek's lawyer looked like he was about to be sick. "I reviewed Sarah Mitchell's service record personally," the general said. "I gave her commendations. I sent her on the most important missions we had. I trusted her with classified information at the highest levels of our government. I trusted her with the lives of soldiers under her command." The general turned and looked directly at Derek. If Sarah Mitchell is not fit to be a guardian to her granddaughter, then she is not fit to serve in the military. And I know for a fact that she was more than fit to serve. I know that she was extraordinary. Marcus stepped forward. Your Honor, Marcus said, his voice steady and commanding, I served with Sarah Mitchell for 6 years. She has saved my life. More than once. She is brave. She is loyal. She is smart. And most importantly, she is caring. I have seen her comfort wounded soldiers. I have seen her take care of people who were frightened and hurt. Any child would be lucky to have her as a guardian. Emma Thompson is not in danger with Sarah Mitchell. Emma Thompson is in the safest possible hands. Stone stepped forward. Your Honor, Stone said, I was Sarah Mitchell's team leader on multiple operations. She is the most disciplined soldier I have ever known. She is the most honorable soldier I have ever known. She is not a threat to a child. She is a protector. That is who she is. That is what she does. One by one, the Delta Force operators spoke. They talked about Sarah's bravery. They talked about her dedication. They talked about her character. They talked about what it meant to serve with her. The judge sat there, listening to 6 elite soldiers talk about a woman he had dismissed yesterday as unfit. The general spoke again. Your Honor, I am respectfully asking you to reconsider your ruling. You made a decision based on incomplete information. You did not understand who Sarah Mitchell is. You did not understand what kind of person she is. I understand. I have served with her. These men understand. They have bled alongside her. The general's voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. I am asking this court to award custody of Emma Thompson back to Sarah Mitchell. I am asking this court to dismiss Derek Thompson's petition. And I am asking this court to correct the grave error that was made yesterday. Judge Williams sat back in his chair. He looked at the Delta Force operators. He looked at the general. He looked at Sarah Mitchell standing with them. The judge understood now. This was not a woman who was unfit. This was a woman who was a soldier. A real soldier. One of the best soldiers that the United States military had ever trained. I want to speak with Sarah Mitchell, the judge said quietly. In my chambers. Alone with her lawyer. An hour later, Sarah Mitchell left the judge's chambers. Her face was calm. But her eyes were clear. The judge had apologized. The judge had said that he had been completely wrong. The judge had said that Sarah Mitchell was obviously, without any question, more than fit to be a guardian. And the judge had said that Emma Thompson would be returned to her care immediately. Derek Thompson's petition was dismissed. Derek Thompson was ordered to have no further contact with Emma Thompson. Derek Thompson's attempt to take custody had failed completely. When Sarah walked back into the courtroom, the Delta Force operators were still standing in formation. They had not moved. They had not spoken since their testimony. They had simply stood there, a silent wall of support. Sarah looked at each of them. She nodded. A small gesture. A soldier's acknowledgement. And each of them, in perfect synchronization, saluted her. 6 Delta Force operators. All saluting at the same time. All showing respect to a woman who had served with them. Marcus stepped forward and handed Sarah a piece of paper with phone numbers written on it. We're all here, Marcus said. All of us who served with you. All of us who know who you are. Call if you need anything. Anything at all. Emma is family now. And family protects family. General Williams put his hand on Sarah's shoulder. Welcome back, Master Sergeant Mitchell, he said. Your mission now is to raise that girl. And from what I know about you, you're going to do it perfectly. For the first time in days, Sarah smiled. Emma came home that evening. A court officer brought her from Derek's house. Emma ran into Sarah's arms and did not let go. She cried. She was confused about what had happened, but she understood that she was home. She understood that her grandmother had fought for her. She understood that she was where she belonged. Sarah held her granddaughter and cried tears of relief. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah's phone rang. It was her son, Michael. Michael was deployed overseas, but somehow he had heard what happened. A soldier in his unit had told him. A soldier who had served alongside his mother. "Mom," Michael said, and his voice was shaking, "what happened? What did you do? Why are there stories all over military social media about you? Why are Delta Force operators talking about you?" Sarah did not want to lie to her son. But she also did not want to tell him the full truth about her past. She had tried very hard to leave Delta Force in the past. "I served in the military," Sarah said simply. "For a long time. In a unit that is not usually talked about. But people I served with found out that Emma was in trouble. They came to help." "You were Delta Force," Michael said. It was not a question. He understood now. He understood why his mother was so strong. He understood why she never talked about her military service. He understood why she was so quiet and controlled and disciplined. "Yes," Sarah said. "All those years," Michael said, "all those years you were raising me, you were a Delta Force operator." "I was," Sarah said. "And you never told me," Michael said. "You never talked about it." "I wanted you to have a normal life," Sarah said. "I wanted you to have a mother. Not a soldier. Just a mother." Michael was quiet for a long time. "I'm so proud of you," he said finally. "And I'm sorry that Derek tried to hurt Emma. I'm sorry that I wasn't there to help. I'm sorry that you had to fight that battle alone." "I wasn't alone," Sarah said. "I had help. I had friends. I had people who remembered who I was." After Sarah hung up with Michael, she sat on her bed and thought about her life. She thought about the years in Delta Force. She thought about the operations. She thought about the people she had served with. She thought about the people she had lost. She thought about how she had tried to leave that world behind. She thought about how she had moved to a small town and tried to become invisible. She thought about how she had tried to be just a regular person with a normal life. And then she thought about how that world had come back. Not to hurt her. But to help her. To protect her. To remind her that she was not invisible. That she was not forgotten. That she was part of a community of soldiers who would always have her back. The next day, Jennifer Park called Sarah. "I need to tell you something," Jennifer said. "The local news wants to cover your story. They want to interview you about what happened in court. They think this is a story that people need to hear." Sarah wanted to say no. Sarah wanted to hide. Sarah wanted to go back to being invisible. But then she thought about all the other military veterans who had been through family court. She thought about all the other veterans who had been prejudged because of their service. She thought about all the other people who had been dismissed and disrespected. "I'll do the interview," Sarah said. The interview ran on local news. Then it was picked up by national news. The story spread. Woman in gray suit revealed to be Delta Force operator. The headlines were everywhere. But more importantly, the story sparked a conversation. Military veterans started talking about their own experiences in family court. They started talking about how judges had treated them. They started talking about the bias they had faced. Judge Williams, the judge who had ruled against Sarah initially, became deeply ashamed. He started looking into his own past decisions. He started wondering how many other veterans he had unfairly judged. He reached out to local veteran organizations and asked for their help in training judges about military service. 6 months later, Judge Williams established the first military veterans courthouse liaison program in Colorado. Military veterans were trained to sit in family courts and educate judges about military service and trauma and the challenges that veterans face. General Williams and the Delta Force operators became media figures, speaking about the importance of understanding military service. They gave interviews. They spoke at schools. They talked about what it meant to serve your country. They talked about the sacrifices that soldiers make. But most importantly, Sarah Mitchell's story changed how people thought about veterans. Before her story, many people thought of military service as something that automatically made a person unfit to be a parent. They thought that combat trauma automatically made a person dangerous. They thought that time away from home automatically made a person emotionally unavailable. After Sarah's story, people started to understand that military service was actually a mark of strength. That military training was actually training in discipline and honor and sacrifice. That veterans were not broken people. They were people who had made extraordinary choices. They were people who were worthy of respect. Emma grew up knowing her grandmother's story. Emma grew up knowing that her grandmother was a hero. Emma grew up surrounded by people who understood sacrifice and service and commitment. Emma grew up understanding that she had been protected by some of the best soldiers in the world. And Emma grew up understanding that sometimes, the most important battles are not fought in distant countries with weapons and explosives. Sometimes the most important battles are fought in courtrooms with truth and integrity and people who are willing to stand up and say what is right. 2 years after the custody case, Sarah received an invitation. It came in an official envelope with an official seal. She was being invited to the United States Military Academy at West Point. She was being invited to speak to cadets. Future leaders of the United States military wanted to hear her story. Sarah did not want to go. But Emma encouraged her to go. "You have to," Emma said. She was 11 now. She was smart and brave and full of courage. "You have to tell them about what it means to be a real soldier. You have to tell them that being a soldier is not just about fighting. It is about protecting people you love." So Sarah went to West Point. She stood in front of 200 cadets. She told her story. She talked about being a Delta Force operator. She talked about the hard choice to leave. She talked about raising Emma. She talked about the custody battle. She talked about the moment when Delta Force operators walked into that courtroom. And then she said something that would be quoted in military publications and veteran support organizations for years to come. "Being a soldier is not about being tough," Sarah said. "Being a soldier is about being willing to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. When I raised Emma, I was sacrificing my own life for her well-being. When I fought for custody, I was fighting for her future. That is not different from what I did in Delta Force. That is exactly the same thing. Service is service. Sacrifice is sacrifice. Love is love. And honor is something that you take with you everywhere you go, whether you are in uniform or wearing a gray suit in a courtroom." The cadets stood and applauded for 5 minutes. That speech became the most watched military speech on YouTube. It was watched by hundreds of thousands of people. It was shared by veteran organizations. It was quoted by military leaders. General Williams made sure it was shown to every soldier in the units under his command. 3 years after the custody case, the Delta Force operators who had come to the courtroom organized a reunion. They met at Sarah's house in Fairfield, Colorado. 12 soldiers. All of them had served with Sarah. All of them had come to the courtroom to support her. They sat in Sarah's living room, and they told stories. They laughed. They cried. They talked about operations they could not discuss with anyone else. They talked about the people they had lost. They talked about the weight of being the best soldiers in the world. Emma watched them with wonder. She watched her grandmother with these men. She watched how respectful they were. She watched how they treated Sarah like she was a leader. She watched how they looked at her grandmother with admiration. At the end of the evening, Marcus stood up. "I want to say something," Marcus said. "I want to say that Sarah Mitchell is the best soldier I have ever served with. Not the best woman soldier. Not the best female operator. The best soldier. Full stop. There are not many people in this world who have the courage to leave the life they knew and start over. There are not many people who would sacrifice everything for one child. Sarah did that. And then when she was attacked, she did not ask for help. But we came anyway. Because that is what soldiers do. We protect our own. Marcus raised his glass. To Sarah, he said. A soldier. A grandmother. A mother to those who served with her. A hero. Everyone raised their glasses. To Sarah, they said. 6 months later, Sarah received another letter. This one was official military correspondence. She was being awarded a commendation. A formal commendation from the United States military for her service as a veteran and her role in raising awareness about military service and family law. The commendation was signed by the Secretary of Defense. Sarah hung the commendation on her wall next to Emma's school certificates and family photos. Years passed. Emma became a teenager. She knew everything about her grandmother's military service. She was proud of it. She did not see it as something to be hidden or ashamed of. She saw it as something that had made her grandmother who she was. When Emma was 16, she told her grandmother that she wanted to join the military. I want to be like you, Emma said. I want to serve. Sarah thought about this. She thought about all the dangers that came with military service. She thought about the pain. She thought about the loss. She thought about the things that would change Emma forever. But she also thought about the honor. She thought about the purpose. She thought about being part of something bigger than yourself. Okay, Sarah said. If that is what you want, I will support you. But I want you to understand what you are choosing. I already understand, Emma said. You taught me. You showed me what it means to be a soldier. You showed me that being a soldier means protecting people. Being a soldier means sacrifice. Being a soldier means honor. Sarah smiled. Her granddaughter was right. 10 years after the custody case, General Williams retired. He held a ceremony at the military installation in Colorado. Hundreds of soldiers attended. Sarah was invited as a guest of honor. The general gave a speech. He talked about his career. He talked about the soldiers he had served with. And then he talked about Sarah Mitchell. There is a woman in this room, the general said, who changed my understanding of what it means to be a soldier. This woman served in Delta Force for 18 years. This woman was one of the best operators I ever commanded. And then this woman left the military to raise her granddaughter. The general looked directly at Sarah. Sarah taught me that being a soldier is not just about what you do in uniform. Being a soldier is about who you are when no one is looking. Being a soldier is about sacrifice and honor and love. Sarah sacrificed her life as a Delta Force operator because she loved her granddaughter. That made her a better soldier, not a lesser one. That made her a hero. The general paused. When Sarah's custody was threatened, I sent Delta Force operators to that courtroom. I did that not just because Sarah had served with us. I did that because Sarah represented everything we stand for. Sarah represented the idea that soldiers come home. Soldiers have families. Soldiers deserve respect in civilian life. Soldiers deserve to be seen for who they really are. The general turned to face the audience. Every soldier in this room should understand something. Your service does not end when you take off the uniform. Your service continues when you are a parent. Your service continues when you are a grandmother. Your service continues when you are a nurse or a teacher or a security consultant. Your service continues in every single thing you do, because you have been trained to do it right. You have been trained to sacrifice. You have been trained to honor. You have been trained to serve. The general looked back at Sarah. Sarah Mitchell is a hero. Not because of what she did in Delta Force. But because of what she did after. She came home. She raised a child. She built a life. And when she was attacked, she did not break. She fought. That is heroism. Real heroism. The kind that does not make headlines. The kind that happens in quiet towns in Colorado, where a woman in a gray suit raises her granddaughter and changes the world by simply being honest about who she is. The entire room stood and applauded. Sarah stood as well. Tears were streaming down her face. In the audience, she could see Marcus and Jenkins and Stone and the other Delta Force operators who had come to the courtroom. They were all standing. They were all applauding. They were all honoring her. After the ceremony, Emma came and hugged her grandmother. Emma was in the military now. Emma was a soldier. Emma was proud of her grandmother and proud of her service. "You changed the world, Grandma," Emma said. "You changed how people think about military service. You changed how people think about being a parent. You changed everything." Sarah held her granddaughter. She thought about the day she stood in that corner of the courthouse, invisible. She thought about how the Delta Force operators had not noticed her at first. She thought about how she had seemed like just another woman in a gray suit waiting for something. She thought about the moment when General Marcus Williams had looked at her and called her ma'am. That single word had told everyone listening that this woman was not invisible. That this woman was not just a regular person. That this woman was someone worthy of honor. That this woman was a soldier. And the world had understood. The Delta Force operators had recognized her. The general had recognized her. The judge had understood. And the world had learned. Sarah Mitchell had gone from invisible to unforgettable. She had gone from a woman being disrespected in a courtroom to a woman being honored at military ceremonies. She had gone from fighting for custody alone to having the most elite soldiers in the world standing beside her. But more importantly, Sarah had shown that being a soldier does not end when you leave the military. Being a soldier means carrying those values into everything you do. It means being a grandmother with discipline and honor. It means being a guardian with sacrifice and love. It means being a human being who understands that service is not just about defending your country. Service is about defending the people you love. Sarah Mitchell had served her country in Delta Force. But she had served her granddaughter in a way that was far more important. And in doing so, she had become a hero in a way that bullets and medals and commendations could never measure. She had become the hero that her granddaughter needed. And that, in the end, was the greatest honor of all. One simple word had changed everything. Ma'am. Spoken with respect by a general who understood who she really was. One word that told a story. One word that brought the truth into the light. And sometimes, that is all it takes. One person recognizing another person for who they really are. One moment of honor. One moment of truth.